The world believed Andrew Whitmore's newborn son, Eli, had been born blind. Doctors confirmed it. Specialists repeated it. Even Andrew, crushed after losing his wife in a helicopter crash, accepted it as truth. The massive mansion he lived in became a tomb of silence, broken only by soft footsteps and the quiet hum of machines meant to stimulate a baby who never reacted. Every morning, Andrew lifted Eli gently from his crib and carried him to the window, letting sunlight pour in, a ritual that never changed anything. Eli's eyes stayed wide open, unfocused, staring through light instead of at it. Toys with bright colors lay untouched across the nursery floor. Rattles, stuffed animals, mobiles, none of them earned even a blink. Some days Andrew worried Eli couldn't hear either, but doctors insisted his hearing was normal. The child simply existed in a quiet shell. Andrew tried everything: music, therapy toys, sensory lights, but the house remained cold and silent. He fed the baby, bathed him, held him close, but Eli never smiled, never reached out, never showed that he recognized his father at all. The man who once commanded boardrooms now sat alone in dim rooms, whispering stories to a child who never reacted. At night, Andrew lingered beside the crib, staring at the tiny, unmoving face, wondering whether Eli felt warmth or anything at all. The mansion that once echoed with his wife's laughter now suffocated him with emptiness. He prayed for one sign, a blink, a twitch, a connection, but the child remained quiet, trapped in stillness neither of them understood. The next morning, a new housekeeper named Ellis arrived at the Whitmore mansion. A driver dropped her off at the tall iron gates, and as they opened, she stepped out quietly, clutching a small bag and her job contract. The silence inside the estate struck her immediately, too still, too heavy for a house this large. A stern butler escorted her through spotless halls that looked more like museum galleries than rooms a family lived in. No music, no laughter, no movement. Mara said little. She didn't come here for conversation. A few months earlier, she had lost her own newborn, a tragedy that hollowed out her world. She applied for this job because it was far away from everything she knew, a place where she could disappear into routines. While cleaning the living room, Mara noticed toys scattered across a beige playmat. A small figure sat quietly in the center, baby Eli, completely still, gripping a toy car without truly holding it. His wide eyes didn't follow her. They didn't focus on anything. He didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't react as she moved around him. Mara paused. She had cared for children before. Even the quiet ones fidgeted or whimpered. But this child, he looked suspended, like he wasn't fully in the world. The butler returned and said plainly, "That's Mr. Whitmore's son. He doesn't respond. Don't try to play with him." Mara nodded, but her gaze lingered on Eli. Something tightened in her chest, an old ache she tried to bury. She finished her tasks, but even as she walked away, she felt the weight of his stillness following her. Something inside her shifted, subtle but certain. That night, Mara lay awake in her small upstairs room, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't get Eli's blank face out of her mind. The way he sat on the mat, silent, unmoving, reminded her painfully of the last hours with her own baby. She tried to push the thought away, but it clung to her. This wasn't normal stillness. It felt like the boy was locked somewhere deep inside himself. The next morning, the house was as quiet as ever. Mara followed her schedule, dusting shelves and straightening furniture. When it was time for Eli's bath, she lifted him gently from the playmat. He didn't react to her touch, didn't turn toward her voice. His small body rested limply in her arms. She carried him to the makeshift bathing station, warm water in a round basin atop the dining table, towels neatly folded beside it. Mara undressed him carefully and lowered him into the bath. As always, he remained motionless. She began washing him softly, letting the sponge move slowly across his skin. Then it happened. A bit of foam slid from his forehead down to the corner of his eye. Eli blinked. A tiny, natural blink, but very real. Mara froze, breath catching. She repeated the same motion. More foam touched the skin near his other eye. He blinked again. For the first time, his lips parted just slightly, a small, faint sound escaping him. Something inside Mara surged. This wasn't reflex. This wasn't emptiness. It was response. She continued the bath with trembling hands, watching his eyes closely. The change was subtle, barely there movements, tiny shifts, but undeniable. Eli wasn't unreachable. He wasn't empty. Something inside him had stirred, and Mara had seen it. She dried him slowly, carefully, holding him longer than usual, her heart beating quicker with every tiny sign of life. When she placed him back on the playmat, she paused. He blinked again. Not random, not empty, real. The following morning, Mara entered the living room with a quiet, nervous hope she tried to hide from herself. Eli sat exactly where she had left him, small and still on the playmat, his stuffed bear limp in his hand. But Mara no longer saw a lifeless child. She saw possibility. She carried him to the bath again, heart beating faster than before. She repeated every step with precision. Warm water, soft sponge, gentle strokes. Eli remained calm, but Mara watched his eyes carefully, waiting. When she wiped his forehead, a thin line of foam drifted toward his lashes. He blinked. Then he blinked again. Her breath caught. She let out the faintest whisper of relief, only for the moment to shatter into something bigger. Eli's lips moved. A broken little sound vibrated from his throat. "Mo." Mara froze. Then he tried again, shaping the sounds slowly, as if they had been trapped inside him for months. "Mom. My." The word was fragile, fractured, but unmistakable. Mara felt her entire body go still. She stared at him, unable to speak or breathe. Eli raised his tiny hand from the water, trembling slightly, and touched her cheek. A deliberate gesture, a choice. Her eyes flooded. She gently moved her hand across his line of sight. He followed it. Left, right, present, aware. She finished the bath with shaking hands, holding on to every new sign, every blink, every tiny sound. When she lifted him from the water, he rested against her shoulder, warm and quiet, but no longer empty. When she laid him on the playmat afterward, he looked toward her voice. Mara sat beside him for several minutes, heart racing. This child wasn't blind to the world, not anymore. Over the next few days, Mara approached her duties with new purpose. Each morning's bath became a quiet experiment. She kept the routine identical, same temperature, same sponge, same gentle rhythm, to be sure the changes she saw weren't illusions. And every time, Eli responded more. He blinked more quickly when the foam neared his eyes. He made soft sounds, tiny murmurs that trembled like the beginnings of speech. Sometimes his gaze shifted ever so slightly, following her fingers or the shimmer of water. Mara wrote everything down on a small scrap of paper she hid under her mattress. But as she watched closely, she began noticing something else. Every afternoon, without fail, the butler or an in-house nurse visited Eli's room with a small bottle of eye drops. They lifted the infant gently and applied the liquid with practiced indifference. Eli barely reacted, his eyes dulling afterward. Mara hadn't questioned it at first. Rich families followed routines, especially medical ones. But one day, when the staff left, she picked up the bottle. The label was faded, old. The expiration date had passed months ago. The name of the medication was smudged, barely readable. A strange weight settled in her stomach. That night, Mara searched the partial words online. When she found the match, her blood ran cold. The drug was meant to suppress sensitivity to light, often making visions slower, blurrier, even unresponsive. Her hands shook. What if Eli wasn't blind? What if the drops were keeping him from seeing? The next day, she watched carefully. After each dose, Eli grew duller, quieter. But by morning, before the next round, he blinked more, followed more, reacted more. It couldn't be coincidence. Someone was unknowingly, or deliberately, reducing the boy's ability to see. Mara stared at Eli on the playmat, watching him blink softly at a streak of sunlight. She whispered to herself, voice barely audible, "You can see, can't you?" That afternoon, while the house was wrapped in its usual heavy silence, Mara prepared Eli's bath again. The warm water swirled in the basin, soft foam gathering at the surface. This time her hands were steady, but her heartbeat wasn't. She knew now his reactions were real, and something in this mansion was hiding the truth. She lifted Eli gently from the playmat. His body relaxed against her arm, but his eyes, once empty, held a faint flicker she could no longer ignore. As she undressed him and eased him into the water, a fragile calm filled the room. Mara repeated the bath routine slowly, watching him as closely as she breathed. Then, as she wiped foam across his forehead, a thin stream drifted toward his lashes. He blinked. She waited. He blinked again. Then his lips parted. "Mo." A tiny sound. She froze. A second try, clearer this time. "Mommy." Before she could react, the front door opened sharply. Footsteps, hurried, heavy, crossed the floor. Mara turned. Andrew Whitmore stood at the entrance, coat in hand. His eyes locked on the scene, the baby in the basin, foam clinging to his cheeks, and Mara, trembling. Before Andrew could speak, Eli turned his head, looked directly at him, focused. Andrew stopped mid-step, breath leaving him like he'd been struck. "Eli?" he whispered, voice breaking. The baby blinked, slow, deliberate, and splashed the foam. "Mommy!" Eli cried again, but this time he was looking at Andrew. Mara stepped back, stunned. Andrew knelt beside the basin, eyes filling. "You're looking at me," he whispered. Mara finally found words, voice shaking. He can see the foam. He follows movement. He's not blind." Andrew's world cracked open, and nothing in the mansion would ever be the same. Andrew sat frozen on the floor beside the basin, droplets of foam clinging to his sleeves as he stared at his son. Really stared, because Eli was looking back at him, not through him, not past him, at him. His hands trembled as he cupped the boy's cheek. "Eli, you can see me," he whispered, disbelief shaking every word. Mara stood behind him, heart pounding. She felt like she had crossed a line simply by being the witness to this moment. But Andrew's shock soon hardened into something else. Confusion, anger, fear, all tangled together. He turned to her sharply. "How long?" he demanded. "How long have you known?" Mara swallowed. "I noticed changes only this week. Blinking, tracking movement, and the eye drops." She hesitated, watching his expression darken. "They make him dull. Every time." Andrew's face drained of color. He rose abruptly, nearly knocking over the basin. "Who prescribed those?" he muttered, voice rising. "Who told my staff to keep using them?" Mara retrieved the small bottle from the counter, placing it in his hand. He stared at the faded label, anger brewing like a storm. "Dr. Adrian Malvern," he growled. "He oversaw Eli's case from day one." Before Mara could speak, he stormed toward the study, phone already in his hand. She heard his voice rising, sharp, furious, echoing down the hallway. "You told me my son would never see. You told me there was no hope. Why was he given drops that suppress vision? Explain it!" A long silence. Then Andrew's voice dropped, deadly quiet. "That's your answer?" He ended the call and slammed the phone onto the desk. When he returned to the living room, he looked shaken. Malvern said it was protocol. His jaw tightened. But he sounded terrified. He looked at Mara, eyes burning with resolve. "Someone lied to me about my son." The morning after Andrew confronted Dr. Malvern, the mansion buzzed with an energy Mara had never felt before. Andrew didn't sleep. She could see it in his face. But every movement he made was sharp, determined. He paced the foyer with his phone in hand until a sleek black car finally pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out, Dr. Helena Ruiz, a respected pediatric neurologist and visual development specialist. Andrew rushed to greet her, desperation etched across his features. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," he said quickly. Dr. Ruiz nodded, her expression calm but focused. "You said there were inconsistencies in the child's diagnosis?" Andrew didn't answer with words. He simply gestured for her to follow. Mara stood beside Eli's playmat, gently holding his hand as the doctor approached. Eli blinked up at the newcomer, and Dr. Ruiz caught it immediately. "That's a purposeful blink," she murmured. Andrew inhaled sharply. Dr. Ruiz knelt at Eli's level, shining a small pen light and moving it slowly across his field of vision. To everyone's astonishment, Eli's gaze shifted, slightly delayed but intentional. She tried again. The response was clearer. Mara covered her mouth. Andrew's hands shook. Dr. Ruiz sat back on her heels and exhaled. "This child is not fully blind." Andrew closed his eyes, overcome. "But," she continued gently, "something is interfering with his visual processing. It's not congenital. It appears induced." She lifted the bottle of eye drops Mara had saved. Her brow furrowed deeply. "Who prescribed these?" Andrew's voice cracked. "Malvern." Dr. Ruiz stood abruptly. "These would absolutely dull vision in an infant. Prolonged use could mimic blindness." The room fell silent except for Eli's soft, curious coo. Andrew knelt beside him, forehead touching his son's tiny hand. Dr. Ruiz turned to Mara, her tone respectful. "You were the one who noticed. You saved this child's future." Mara stared at Eli, tears gathering. "He saved himself. I just paid attention." Andrew insisted on running a full examination immediately. Dr. Ruiz set up her portable equipment in the nursery while Mara held Eli close, whispering softly to keep him calm. Electrodes, visual tracking tools, response monitors, far more advanced than anything the first doctor had used, were arranged with careful precision. As the tests began, Dr. Ruiz's professional calm slowly shifted into something darker. She reviewed the results on her tablet, her brows knitting tighter with every scan. Andrew hovered anxiously at her shoulder. "Mara," Dr. Ruiz said gently, "could you move your hand left to right in his field of vision?" Mara obeyed. Eli followed. Not perfectly, but clearly. Andrew let out a broken breath. Dr. Ruiz turned the tablet toward him. "These readings confirm it. Your son's brain reacts to visual stimuli. The pathways are active, slowed, dampened, but absolutely functional." "Meaning?" Andrew whispered. "Meaning someone diagnosed your child without proper testing," she said firmly, "and intentionally prescribed drops that mimic visual failure." The room chilled. Andrew staggered back, gripping the crib rail as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. "Why would Malvern do this? Why lie to me about my own son?" Dr. Ruiz hesitated before answering. "These drops, they were part of an outdated protocol from years ago. Only someone very careless, or someone trying to hide a mistake, would still use them." Mara felt Eli tighten his tiny fingers around hers. She swallowed hard. "So he never had a vision disorder at all?" Dr. Ruiz shook her head. "No. He struggled early, yes, but with proper treatment he would have progressed normally. This suppression set him back months." The weight of that sank in like a stone. Andrew ran a hand through his hair, anger flashing beneath his grief. "I trusted him. I trusted every word he said." Dr. Ruiz placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "I'll help you file a formal inquiry, but first, Eli needs immediate therapy. With the right care, he can recover fully." Andrew nodded slowly, eyes shining as he looked at his son. "He's getting that care," he said. "Today." After Dr. Ruiz left to prepare a full treatment plan, the mansion felt different. Still silent, but no longer dead. Hope moved through the halls like a draft, subtle but present. Mara cleaned the nursery while Andrew paced endlessly, unable to sit still. Every few minutes he checked on Eli, as if afraid the progress would vanish. But hope didn't erase anger. Andrew finally marched to his office and pulled out every medical report Malvern had ever sent. He spread them across the desk, dozens of pages, all repeating the same words: irreversible, non-reactive, lifelong blindness. Nothing about eye drops, nothing about follow-up testing, nothing about delays or improvement. As Mara stepped in quietly to bring him tea, she caught sight of the files and paused. "Mr. Whitmore," she said softly, "none of these match what Dr. Ruiz saw." Andrew rubbed his temples. "That's because Malvern didn't examine him properly. He told me Eli's condition was hopeless from the beginning." "Why?" Mara asked. He didn't answer at first. Then he pointed to one paper tucked beneath the rest. "Because of this." She stepped closer. The document showed Eli's birth record, arrival time, surgical notes, complications, and the name of the attending physician, Dr. Adrian Malvern. Mara inhaled sharply. "He delivered Eli," Andrew said bitterly, "and he was the one who first claimed the boy had severe developmental complications." A realization hit Mara hard. If he made a mistake during delivery— Andrew slammed his fist onto the desk. "He covered it up." Mara swallowed. "And the drops were meant to hide the symptoms? Or convince everyone, including me, that Eli was beyond saving?" Andrew murmured. He turned to her suddenly, eyes dark. "I'm going to expose him." Before Mara could speak, Eli let out a soft coo from the doorway. Andrew looked up, and the hardness in his expression cracked. His son was watching him, really watching. Andrew walked over and sank to his knees, pulling the child close. "No more lies," he whispered. "I promise you." The next day, Andrew moved with a level of determination Mara hadn't seen in him before. He requested every surveillance clip, every medical log, every bottle of medication stored anywhere in the mansion. Staff hurried nervously around him, half afraid of his temper, half relieved that the silent grief he once carried had been replaced by purpose. Mara helped gather the items, organizing everything on the dining table. As she laid out Eli's medication history, she noticed something chilling. Dr. Malvern had scheduled mandatory eye drop applications 3 times a day, every day, without reassessment. No dosage adjustments, no checkups, no evaluations, just repetition, just maintenance of blindness. Andrew stared at the stack of files, jaw clenched. He wanted to bury the truth, and he used my son to do it. Mara hesitated before speaking. What if someone else knew? A nurse, an assistant? Andrew shook his head. Malvern signs everything himself. He isolates his cases. No witnesses. A silence fell. Then Andrew lifted his phone. "I'm calling the medical board." But before he could dial, Mara touched his arm gently. "Mr. Whitmore, will they listen? He's powerful, respected. You said it yourself." Andrew exhaled sharply. "Then I'll give them something they can't ignore." He pointed to the file showing expired medication. "This is malpractice, and Dr. Ruiz's report will confirm everything." He grabbed the documents and headed toward the foyer. Mara followed, carrying Eli. Just as Andrew reached the door, Eli stretched out his tiny hand toward his father, eyes following him with undeniable recognition. Andrew froze, overwhelmed. He took Eli into his arms and held him close. A long, trembling breath escaped him. "That's enough proof for me," he murmured. "And it's going to be enough for them, too." He looked toward the exit with fire in his eyes. Time to end this. Andrew didn't wait for legal procedures or scheduled appointments. He drove straight to Dr. Adrian Malvern's private clinic that same afternoon. Mara held Eli at home, pacing anxiously as she waited for news. The mansion felt tense, like it was holding its breath. At the clinic, Andrew walked through the glass doors with a force that startled the receptionist. "I need to see Dr. Malvern," he said, voice clipped but controlled. The woman stammered, "Sir, he's with a patient." Andrew didn't wait. He strode down the hallway, yanking open doors until he found the doctor in his office, calmly writing notes. Malvern looked up with mild annoyance. "Andrew," he said smoothly, "you should have scheduled an appointment. I told you Eli's case." Andrew slammed the bottle of expired eye drops onto the desk. Malvern froze. "What is this?" Andrew demanded. "Why was my son given vision-suppressing medication every day since birth? Why did you tell me his blindness was irreversible?" Malvern's carefully constructed composure flickered. These drops were part of a protocol. A protocol discontinued a decade ago," Andrew snapped. "You lied to me." The doctor's jaw tightened. "Your son had complications at birth. I did what I could." "You caused the complications," Andrew said, voice low and shaking. "And you hid it. You kept him from progressing so no one would question your original diagnosis." Malvern stood abruptly, anger rising. "You have no proof of that." Andrew stepped closer. "I have his new evaluations. I have reports from Dr. Helena Ruiz, and I have video evidence of Eli following movement, blinking at stimulus, responding with visual intent." Malvern paled. "You destroyed months of my son's development," Andrew said, voice cracking. "You stole hope from me when I was grieving my wife." For the first time, Malvern's mask split, revealing panic. "Andrew, please, think carefully about what you're accusing me of." "I've already filed the complaint," Andrew said quietly. "This is no longer between us." He turned and walked out, leaving the doctor staring at the bottle, the evidence that would unravel everything. When Andrew returned to the mansion, Mara immediately sensed the shift in him. His expression was tight, restrained, like rage wrapped in ice. Eli reached toward him, and Andrew softened just enough to take the child into his arms. But beneath that softness, something was storming. "What happened?" Mara asked quietly. Andrew exhaled shakily. "Malvern didn't deny anything. He tried to twist it, but he knows he's done." Mara watched Eli rest his head on his father's shoulder. The child was calmer now, more aware. Every tiny blink filled her with awe. Andrew continued. "Dr. Ruiz filed the emergency report. The medical board is meeting tomorrow morning." His voice dropped. "They could suspend him immediately." Mara nodded, relieved yet shaken. "That's justice." But Andrew didn't answer right away. He stared at the wall, eyes distant, jaw clenched. "Mara, he stole months of my son's life. Months I could have spent helping him grow instead of grieving over something that wasn't even real." Mara touched his arm gently. "You didn't know. You trusted him. That's the part I can't forgive." Andrew looked down at Eli. "I let a stranger decide my child's future, and he used my grief against me." Eli lifted his tiny hand to Andrew's cheek, focusing, recognizing. Andrew's breath broke. Mara stepped closer. "You're here now, and you're fighting for him." He nodded slowly. "I won't stop until no one else suffers because of him." That night, Andrew didn't return to his room. He stayed beside Eli's crib, watching his son track the dim nightlight with faint but deliberate movements. Mara passed the doorway and saw him sitting there, shoulders slumped, hope and heartbreak tangled together. For the first time in months, Andrew whispered something new. "He's coming back to me." And the mansion, once suffocating, felt like it finally exhaled. The next morning, Dr. Helena Ruiz returned to begin Eli's first real treatment session. She carried a small case of developmental tools, soft lights, textured toys, contrast cards, items meant to awaken the visual pathways Malvern had suppressed for so long. Mara stood nearby, holding Eli gently as Dr. Ruiz prepared the room. Andrew hovered anxiously, unable to sit still. Every movement he made was sharp with worry and hope colliding inside him. "Will this hurt him?" he asked for the third time. Dr. Ruiz smiled reassuringly. "No, these exercises are safe. His brain just needs encouragement. Think of it as waking up a part of him that's been asleep. Mara carried Eli to the mat. When she set him down, he blinked up at her, cooing softly. She swallowed her rising emotion. This child had changed everything she thought she'd buried. Dr. Ruiz held up a black and white pattern card. Eli's eyes fluttered, then landed on it with slow recognition. He focused, actually focused, and let out a small sigh of curiosity. Andrew gasped, covering his mouth. "That's a tracking attempt," Dr. Ruiz said warmly. "Very good, Eli." Mara felt tears build. She remembered the first time she saw him blink at the foam, how small that moment seemed compared to what she was witnessing now. Next, Dr. Ruiz moved a soft, glowing light side to side. Eli followed it clumsily but deliberately. Andrew dropped to his knees beside him, laughter breaking through the heaviness. "You're doing it, buddy! You're really doing it!" Eli reached toward the light, his tiny fingers opening and closing. Mara whispered, "He's waking up." Dr. Ruiz nodded. "With consistent therapy, he'll catch up in no time. His vision isn't gone. It was held back. But children are resilient." Andrew touched his son's cheek gently. "You're stronger than all of us." For the first time in months, hope didn't feel fragile. It felt real. Weeks passed, and the mansion transformed. The once silent halls now echoed with soft laughter, gentle coos, and the sound of Eli discovering his world. Therapy sessions continued daily, Andrew attending every single one, Mara guiding Eli with patient hands, and Dr. Ruiz adjusting the plan as his progress accelerated. Eli was no longer the still, expressionless child Mara had first carried to the bath. He reached for toys now, bright ones, noisy ones. He followed faces, tracked movements, reacted to light. The changes were small at first, but they grew quickly. One morning, while Andrew lifted him from the crib, Eli giggled, an actual giggle, and touched his father's face with certainty. Andrew nearly broke down again. Mara watched from the doorway, her chest tightening not with sorrow, but with pride. Eli's world was opening. One evening, after a successful therapy session, Andrew found Mara in the kitchen washing dishes. He hesitated before speaking. "You saved him," he said quietly. "If you hadn't noticed, if you hadn't cared." Mara shook her head. "He reached for the world. I just reached back." Andrew stepped closer. "You've given me my son. I'll never forget that." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by Eli's babbling from the living room, testing his voice, discovering sound. Later, as the sun set, Mara sat beside Eli on the playmat. The room glowed warm and golden. She moved her fingers slowly across his line of sight. His eyes followed with ease. She smiled. "See? You're not lost anymore." Andrew joined them on the floor, pulling his son into his arms. Eli reached up, touching his father's cheek with certainty. And for the first time, Andrew didn't look like a man haunted by grief. He looked like a father filled with hope. Mara exhaled softly. The truth had been painful, but it brought Eli back to the light.